Hello, welcome to Pollyanna, our Dufour 425 Grand Large yacht. The aim of this presentation is not to be a slick and polished presentation with whizzy graphics and special effects, but rather a virtual handover to show the skipper and first mate how all the major functions on the boat actually work. Embedded somewhere in this video is a code word which you will be asked to repeat as evidence that you have watched the video from end to end. This code word is not present in the YouTube version of this video. At any point you can start, stop, pause, rewind or begin again this video, and once you have watched it from end to end, please return the tablet to the office along with any questions you may have, and we'll be delighted to help you. Now let's go to the boat and start by having a look at the engine. Welcome aboard Pollyanna. Firstly, we'll have a look at the engine. The front of the engine is accessed by lifting up the bottom companionway step, and the whole unit is on a gas strut. We'll also be accessing the port and starboard aft cabins to look at the side of the engine. The most important thing to check on the engine is that every time you start it, there is water coming out of the exhaust to cool it. If there isn't, the first thing to check is the primary seawater strainer, which is accessed from the port aft cabin, which we'll look at in a few moments. If clearing that out doesn't work, then the rubber impeller in the water pump may be burnt out, as it's only made of rubber blades, and with a lack of cooling water it gets very hot very quickly. If that's the case, remove this brass disc by taking the 4 screws out of the faceplate, pull out the remains of the old impeller, find the new one in the engine spares kit, pop it in and replace the faceplate. And for cooling seawater, that's all there is to it. It comes through the primary strainer, to the pump, through the engine and out of the exhaust. All our engines are serviced before every charter, and in the space of a week there's no great need to do anything to it. If you want to do daily checks, or if your charter is for 2 or 3 weeks or more, then you might want to check the oil level, which is accessed from the starboard aft cabin, and we'll look at that in a moment. Check the drive belt tension. There is a spare drive belt in the engine spares kit if you need it. And the heat exchanger here has a radiator cap on top. And when the engine is cold, and only when the engine is cold, remove that cap, pop your fingers in, and you should just about be able to feel water. It should be about 2 inches below the neck of the cap. If it needs topping up, it's just tap water, fresh water. Now we'll move to the port aft cabin to see the water strainer. Once inside the port aft cabin, behind the door is an access panel which permits access to the back end of the engine, and this is where the seawater strainer is located. The top is just hand tight, you can unscrew it with your hand, and there is a strainer basket inside, and it's designed to catch large objects like jellyfish, plastic bags, etc. And this is the first place to look if there is no cooling water coming out of the exhaust. Just scoop out whatever it is, throw it in the bilge, put the top back on, and that should cure the problem. Also here we can see the gearbox and the top of the sail drive leg. There is no need to check the oil level in this. It doesn't need anything doing to it from one season to the next. We're now going to move to the starboard aft cabin. Behind the door inside the starboard aft cabin, there is an access panel which permits access to the starboard side of the engine. And here we can see the yellow top of the oil dipstick. Just like a car, it has a high mark and a low mark, and the oil level should be between the two. If it requires oil, there is a bottle in the cockpit locker, and it goes in the black filler on top of the rocker box. It's actually easier to access this from the front of the engine. Please add oils in small quantities and then recheck the level. These engines have a very small sump and it's easy to overfill it. It's much easier to add more oil than it is to try and take some out. We're still in the starboard aft cabin, and the top access panel here is access to the batteries, which are located across the top of the engine bay. The power control switches are just here, and they're clearly labelled. The top one is for the service batteries, so if you wanted to turn the service batteries off, that's where you would do it. Same for the engine battery, so if you want to turn it off at night to make sure it's not connected to anything, then you can do. If you had a flat engine start battery, if you take this key out and put it in here and turn it on, you can use the domestic batteries to start the engine. Now we'll go to the navigation station to see where the power goes to. The switch panel at the navigation station has all the switches clearly labelled. Deck light, spare switch, water pressure for pressure at the taps, bilge pump, shower pump. This is the master switch, so this one needs to be on, and then the little rubber switches in each of the showers will pump the grey water away. Navigation lights, anchor light, steaming light. Fridge unit, try and remember to turn it off when you're just under sail, and just turn it back on when you're motoring or on shore power. It takes a considerable amount of power and it's very well insulated and will stay cold for a very long time. Navigation systems, which we'll have a look at shortly, autopilot, saloon lights, cabin lights, music system and 12-volt socket, which is here. These switches here enable you to check the batteries. Position 1 is engine battery, position 2 is domestic battery, water tanks 1 and 2, and diesel tank, it's just the 1. Just above the switch panel is the VHF radio. Press power for on, then adjust volume, squelch and channel select. The quickest way back to 16 is just press 16. If you've got serious issues, lift up this red flap and press the red button, the distress button, for 5 or 6 seconds or more, and it will transmit your exact location and an automatic mayday. The Coast Guard will then call you back as soon as possible. Just beneath the VHF is a standard radio, CD player, MP3 player, and to the right of that are the heating controls. This little rocker switch here, the bottom position is heat, the top position is just fresh air. So it's normally left in the heat position, and to light it, just turn this dial clockwise, and after 3 or 4 minutes you'll feel warm air being blown around the boat. It's very economical, only uses about half a litre an hour. To light it, if your batteries are a little bit tired, you might want to have the engine running at fast idle in neutral. It draws a lot of power to start, but very little to keep it going. So if you've been on anchor overnight with an anchor light on, and everybody's got up and turned all the lights on, you probably will need to have the engine running. The trip switch for the anchor windlass is behind the switch panel. To access it, pull the top of the switch panel down. The red and white switch in front of you is the circuit breaker for the windlass. Its main purpose is to protect the windlass in case the anchor gets jammed, in which case it will turn itself off. Turn it back on again and carry on. You could also use this to turn the power supply to the windlass off, particularly if you have children on board. When the boat joined the fleet, it had a considerable number of security features. This key switch we're looking at now used to be the place to arm the system. It is now all completely disconnected. So this switch here does nothing. The passive infrared system at the bulkhead at the front of the saloon does nothing. It's all completely disconnected. It's now just a convenient place to keep the keys. The circuit breakers for this boat are located underneath the navigator's seat. There is a secondary gas tap for the cooker in the drop-down panel underneath the cooker. Across the pipe, as it's shown now, is off. In line with the pipe is on. There are 2 gas bottles in the cockpit, and one is connected and a full one is spare. The one that's connected must be turned on along with the secondary gas tap that we've just looked at in order to use the cooker. Then select the burner that you require, push the appropriate knob in, turn it clockwise and light it with the matches or click stick provided. Then continue to hold the button in for 5 or 10 seconds and then release. If the flame goes out when you let go, just repeat the procedure and hold the button in for a little longer. This is a flame failure device, so if the flame blows out whilst you're cooking, it shuts the gas off automatically. The gas leak detector is located on the side of the galley just behind the cooker. If this makes a noise and flashes, it indicates a gas leak. Turn the gas off at the bottle, open all the hatches and then investigate. Pollyanna is equipped with 2 water tanks, and the capacity of these and the diesel tank is clearly shown in the skipper's handbook. When the yacht is handed over to you, one tank will be open and one will be closed. The manifold taps are behind this cushion, which is the aft starboard side of the saloon. They're tucked quite a long way behind here, and to access them you'll need to remove this corner cushion and the one next to it, and then have a look down the porthole looking aft. So now we're looking backwards down the back of the seat backs. This is better done by feel rather than sight. It's an awkward place to get at, but you should be able to see the 2 water tank taps. The top one is for the forward tank, which is off. The lever is in line with the pipe. And the aft one is off. The lever is across the pipe. In this instance, when you've emptied the forward tank, close it, open the aft one, and you've used half your water. This yacht is equipped with a microwave, which is located in the port aft cupboard of the galley. All the controls are very simple and clearly labelled. It only works whilst you're on shore power. All our boats have ITT Jabsco twist and lock pumps, which are reliable and easy to use. When you've used the toilet, move this lever to the right hand position, and using the pump, about 10 or 15 strokes will empty the bowl. Move this switch to the left hand position, and using the same pump again, another 15 or 20 strokes will rinse the bowl out and clear the pipes of the boat. None of our boats have holding tanks. They are all straight to ocean, so please don't use them in a marina. The toilets will handle anything that you've eaten and small amounts of toilet paper without an issue. Putting wet wipes or any sanitary products down the toilet will block it instantly. Now please make your way up on deck and we'll start again at the bows. Pollyanna is equipped with 50 metres of anchor chain, and the chain is marked every 10 metres. At 10 metres there is 1 mark, 20 there are 2, and so on. Yellow plastic markers you're looking for, all apart from the last set which are red, just to tell you you're coming to the end of the chain. The bitter end is securely tied to the boat with a length of rope so it can be cut in an emergency. The hand controller is in the forward cabin, and the cable is long enough to be passed up through the hatch and operated from up on deck. To operate the windlass, you will need to have the engine running at fast idle for 2 reasons. Firstly, it draws a lot of power, and secondly, it's good practice to make sure that you can start the engine before you pull the hook out of the ground. Also, you can see here the forward water tank filler at the bottom right of the frame. Pollyanna has 3 reefs in the mainsail, and all the controls for these are led back to the cockpit. The easiest way to put a reef in is to lower the main halyard, tighten the appropriate reefing lines, then retension the main halyard. At port midships you'll find a filler on deck labelled waste. This is the access point to the holding tank, which is not in use. Both toilets are straight out to ocean. Please do not remove this or attempt to change the manifold setting to use the holding tank. At this moment in time the cockpit tent is in position, and shortly we'll have a look how to take that down. Please don't attempt to sail the boat with the cockpit tent in position, as it severely restricts your visibility. On the upside, it does extend the living space considerably and also acts as an efficient sunshade. Underneath the spray hood at the port side are a bank of clutches. The small one is for the main sheet traveller, port side, spare halyard which has no specific purpose, reef 1, main sheet and outhaul. At the starboard side is another bank of clutches for the starboard side main sheet traveller, main halyard, reef 2, reef 3 and vang kicking strap, whatever you prefer to call it. To the starboard side of the companionway the instruments live. So here you can see we've got 0.4 meters of water under the keel. All our boats measure depth under the keel, so think of it as clearance, speed through the water, cumulative log. And the wind information, so it's just coming over the port bow. That's a nice steady 9 knots. The plotter is located at the aft end of the table in the cockpit and is very easy to use. Here you can see us in Dunstafnage Marina, and the simplest way to use it is zoom out to find the place you want to go to. So let's say we wanted to sail up the Sound of Mull. The first place we would want to get to would be Lismore Light. I've zoomed out too far. And then moving the cursor with a multi-directional button, we can put it where we want to go. So let's go between Ladies Rock Lighthouse and the island. Just put the cursor where you want to go, and at the top left here it's telling us to steer 271 degrees true for 5.8 nautical miles, which would take us exactly to that spot. As you make your way across the Firth of Lorne, the plotter will very quickly work out what the tide's doing to you, and the predictive course becomes extremely accurate. You can zoom into immense detail or zoom out to give a better overview. You can also move the chart about by moving the cursor right to the very edge, and now you can see where we are now and where we want to go to. If you're presented with alternative screens that you don't like, or you've been having a play, turn it off, bottom left button, count to 5, turn it back on, and it will come back to this default screen. If you find the boat not on the page, let's push it way off to the west. Rather than playing Hunt the Boat, if you press Find Ship, the soft key down at the bottom here, it will put you back in the middle of the page. Just beneath the plotter is a repeater set for the VHF from down below, and here you can do everything that you can do down below, including issuing an automatic mayday. At the aft end of the cockpit you will notice this silver disc in the floor. This is access to the emergency steering point. If there was any issue with the steering, simply take that disc out with a winch handle, and the large metal pole that looks like a piece of scaffold pole in the cockpit locker fits straight onto the rudder stock, and she becomes a tiller steered boat. Underneath the aft step, which can also be raised up to be an aft seat, is the life raft. The painter is securely tied to the boat, so if you need to use it, it's just a question of removing that seat by lifting it up and outwards. Lift the life raft out of the well and throw it in the water. When it drifts away from the boat, the painter will pull tight and it will inflate. You can then use the painter to pull it back to the boat and all climb in, then cut yourselves free. To start the engine, press the button in the middle of the throttle control lever and apply about 1/2 to 3/4 throttle. Forward or astern, doesn't matter. By pressing the button in, we've disengaged the gearbox, so we can have some revs on the engine without moving. Then on the control panel, press the top left button, which is power, briefly to turn the power on. Then the top right button starts the engine. Then return the throttle level to neutral. The revs drop to tick over, the button pops out. If we were to engage drive now, we would be underway. This is the good time to check that water's coming out of the exhaust, and I can hear it burbling away nicely. To stop the engine, press the bottom right button, then press the power button again to turn it off. There are no lights on this panel. The easiest way to tell whether the power is on or off is to press the start button, and if it doesn't start, the power's off. The auto helm controller is located just above the engine control panel. To use it, get onto the heading that you want and press auto, and it will take control of the wheel and hold that course. Small adjustments plus and minus 1, bigger adjustments plus and minus 10, and to return control to you, just press standby and you will have the wheel back again. To remove the cockpit tent, the first time you try it will take you 15-20 minutes and subsequently probably 5 or 10. The first thing to do is undo these two zips here and there, which separates the cockpit tent from the spray hood. Then make sure both the side panels are unclipped and in the lowered position, like this, not rolled up like this. And now that everything is disconnected, it folds together like a pram hood, and you can see the pivot point here. Then wrap all the excess canvas around the hoop that has been formed by folding the two parts of the spray hood together, and the stay bar, which I'll show you now, fastens onto here with a speed pin. That will hold it in place and should be nice and secure. If you're in any doubt as to what difference the cockpit tent makes, it's 18 degrees outside at the moment, but 26 degrees in the cockpit. My colleague will now demonstrate that. It's probably quicker to do it than to talk about it. My colleague will now undo the two external zips that fasten the cockpit tent to the back of the spray hood. The excess fabric is then folded back over the frame. Then the whole unit is folded backwards, and then the bungee cords taken off the bobbins at the sugar scoop. If the cockpit tent is not going to be used for some time, there is a cover which makes a much neater job of folding it up. To erect the cockpit tent, it's just a reverse of how it's stowed away. The aft water tank filler is on the port side of the sugar scoop. The diesel filler is on the starboard side of the sugar scoop, and the key to undo all filler taps is in the centre cockpit console. When you're ready to leave, please take all the dock lines with you, except any that might be shackled to the pontoon, and also take the shore power lead so you can enjoy shore power at another marina. Before you depart, please take time to study the tidal stream plan of the marina, which is kept in the office, as this will help you have an easy, stress-free departure. When you return after your holiday, your last job is to fill the diesel tank. The diesel station is on leg D for diesel and is clearly marked from seaward. Please call the marina on channel 37 and they will come and serve you. This is all written down in the skipper's handbook. Then bring the boat back to any berth on leg F, Foxtrot. Once you've returned to the berth on leg F, please refill the water tanks and connect her to shore power and tie her up securely before coming to see us in the office. We hope that you have an amazing holiday and thank you for choosing Alba Sailing.